What are red flags? They are the signs that unhealthy people give off that signal that they're not safe, not what they appear to be, or not emotionally available. Now, sometimes they'll tell you the red flag in words right to your face. They'll say things like, you're dating someone, and they say, now, just to let you know, I'm really not looking for a relationship. That is a flashing red light, right? But have you ever ignored it thinking, they probably don't mean it. I'll change them. There's a terrible price to be paid for that. But that's how powerful CPTSD can be in distorting not just our thinking, but our hearing, what we see right in front of our eyes. Now, sometimes the signs are more subtle. You have to listen for them. You have to test the waters. Now, healthy, aware people notice these signs and respond, appropriately. They don't open the door. People with CPTSD lose the ability to accurately read those subtle signs, and we get ensnared. Have you ever met somebody new and you were really excited about them? And then when people who love you and care about you met this person, they had that kind of like puzzled and incredulous expression, like, what's she doing? That's a sign of their red flag detector working when yours has not. And I've done that. And the worst thing is, on some level that you're being dumb, that this new friend or boyfriend or whatever is no good for you. But you know how people say that phrase, once you see the truth, you can't unsee it? Well, with CPTSD, it's amazing. We can unsee it. It goes right into the black hole of non-awareness. Even though going blank in that way, at that moment, is like the worst thing you can do. So why on earth would anyone do something so self-destructive? I'm going to tell you 8 reasons, and you can see how many of them apply to you. Okay, the first reason is, when you were little, you had too much exposure to chaos and fear. Do you remember that feeling? Hearing your parents fight, seeing drug use or violence, being told everything's fine when anyone with eyes could see things were not fine. Witnessing your parents not keeping things safe for everyone, but putting everyone in danger, or not telling the truth, it's so damaging, especially when you're a kid and you can't do anything about it. But what happens is you just learn to turn off your good sense and your perception about what's okay and what's not okay. And this is what happened. You taught yourself to override your own natural instincts. And maybe you're still doing it, shutting yourself down when you're afraid, just going, I don't know, is this bad or is it just me? And when you do this, you're not actually being brave, you're not conquering anything, you're just numb. And you might learn how to look like you're okay, and you might even learn to be okay on a lot of levels. But what's missing is the good kind of vulnerability that you need. It's gone. And what is that vulnerability? It's you being able to feel things. So when you lose that, what else do you lose? Your ability to know and sense the intentions of other people, to detect threats. People can abuse you, and you turn your vulnerability off. And with it, your ability to judge it and gauge it and just think, this isn't right. Now, checking out like that didn't start as a bad thing back when you were in the middle of some abusive situation and you were powerless to stop it or get away. Getting numb when you're powerless is a way up and out. Numb is protection. Thank goodness we were numb, or we would have been much more gravely hurt by what we were exposed to as kids. But now going numb when things get tough means someone who's no good for you appears and you what? You feel nothing. Or you feel a craving for companionship and love, which is normal, but you don't get that, this person would actually not be good for me. They have an addiction, or they are lying to me, or they're just not that into me. Okay, another thing that impairs your red flag detection is dysregulation when something is intensely frightening. Let's say you're in a car with someone who's driving crazy because they're angry, and you get so frightened that you're just flustered. You can't put your thoughts in a sequence. So you're not in denial exactly, and you're not numb, but the kind of quick thinking and power to take action that you need to get out of the car, you can't access it. It's like a bad dream. It's like you see that red flag, but you can't act on it. That can happen with dysregulation. And if you watch my videos, I talk about dysregulation a lot. I teach about it. I have courses, and I'll put links to those down below in the description section. But dysregulation is when your brain waves change from a coordinated flow when you're calm to a jagged, chaotic pattern when you're stressed. Your senses and thinking aren't working right. Your emotions, they just come in bursts. They're too much, and then it'll be like nothing. And this leaves you wide open to people who shouldn't be there, who normally you'd feel repelled by. But there you are with them, like a deer in the headlights. Another thing that happens, especially when there are unhealthy people in your life, is they pressure you to override your natural fears. That sort of like, come on, I dare ya mentality, or calling you chicken, or calling you a prude, pushing you to do something that you don't actually want to do, that you feel is wrong or dangerous. And if you don't have good boundaries and you grew up denying your own reality, it's fairly easy to abandon your own good instincts just because someone told you to. And where does that get you? Alone, lost, and in danger. Okay, another way to lose the ability to detect screaming red flags. You second guess yourself. If you were abused or neglected as a kid, I'll bet you do that a lot. You think, did that person just threaten me? Or I don't know, it's probably just me. This is the worst thing you can do. Going so long through life, never clear whether you're in danger or just imagining things, will actually leave you in danger. And think how valuable it would be if you knew that difference fairly easily, if it came naturally to you. You can do that, and I'll give you some tips in a moment. The biggest reason you end up throwing away your time and the good things in your life is out of the need for people. With CPTSD, that need can be so deep and so unmet, so desperate, that you'll basically put up with a bad person just so there's someone to hang out with. Have you ever done that? You know on some level you're doing it and you're ashamed of yourself, but when something feels like that, pay attention to it. This is the first step, in fact, to healing that ability to detect problems and danger. So let's talk about that. I want to give you 4 steps to heal this, okay? The first thing you've got to do is to get clear. Now, how do you do that? You write it down so that you can't get vague about it. The characteristics of people who are not good for you. Now, in my course on dating and relationships, the whole course starts with learning how to get very, very clear about what you want and what you don't want. And if that interests you, I'll put the links down in the description section below too. But to bring your red flag detector back to life, you start by being clear. Who could hurt you? Who could derail your life or put your kids in jeopardy? Name the things that can do that. Things like abusive behavior, criminal behavior, drugs, alcoholism, untrustworthiness, serious psychological problems, emotional unavailability, or inappropriate people, a boss or professor, or a married person, for example. Okay, then, and we're still on how to get clear, coming back into the list of things that you can't let into your life again, write down, if you were going to do this right this time, how would you more effectively discover if the people you meet have these red flag signs? How could you tell? On some level, you know, but you've gone vague about it before, right? So how could you tell? If someone was abusive, they might not act like it on the first date, right? It might take time, but you'd see other signs, how they treated animals, for example, or how they treated servers in restaurants. How would you know if someone had an addiction? That's something I used to have trouble detecting right off the bat. When people have serious addictions, they have to be pretty good at hiding it, and that's what they do. But if you spend time with them without getting all attached to them, you will start to see the signs. But you have to get to know someone, and that takes time. And it takes time when you're not already bonded with them. Okay? Now, let's say you go on a first date with someone. They're great. They're awesome. Does that mean it's safe to get super intimate with them that day? Not if you have a broken red flag detector. No. And so my next tip for getting your red flag detector working again is with new relationships where your detector hasn't had a chance to suss things out. Here's what you do. You slow things down. Slow is your friend with CPTSD. Slow doesn't come naturally, but it's the way that you can stay conscious during the getting to know you process, not rushing into a relationship or making them into a newfound best friend or soulmate. You take your time and you observe how they are in daily things. You could think of it like you have a developmental delay. You're developing the ability to detect problems and danger. Some people learn this earlier. You're learning it now. So let yourself practice by keeping things slow and deliberate. If this is hard for you, get a friend you trust to be your sounding board. Getting out of delusion is like climbing out of rushing water. Someone has to be standing on the banks to pull you out, okay? So check in about people. Check in about your intention to go slowly and the list of things that you put on your list of like, I cannot do this again. If you're like me, you feel shame about the mistakes of the past. And when some little part of you knows you're screwing up again, You tend to get very secretive and just show people the outer niceties and not tell them your concerns or the real problems going on. If you're ready to heal the pattern, have that person tell them everything and invite them to give you feedback on it. Shine sunlight on the problem areas of your life. Okay? The fourth thing, and you were probably wondering when I would get around to this, because I always say this, use my daily practice to clear out the fearful and resentful thoughts that gum up your clear thinking and perception. Seriously, try it for 7 days. Find out if it helps you. These are very specific techniques I teach. They help me to recover, and I teach them to help you get those thoughts out of your mind and then rest your mind so that you can emerge each time you do the daily practice with a big jump up in clarity. So bit by bit, it's really powerful, and it's one of those things that can't be explained. You just have to experience it. Hello, Ms. Fairy. I have a question about trying to take things slow with a guy that likely also has CPTSD, but isn't interested in diagnoses much. But he acknowledges that he has a lot to learn, and he has insecurities. Now, I know it's not my job to fix him, but he's so clearly terrified of the pressure of status, as he put it. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Not admitting fear, but insecurity. How can I help him without being pushy, says Penelope. We first met about a year ago, but he ghosted me twice when we became close rather quickly. We're both Christian and desire to live for God and have only held hands as far as physical intimacy. I'm also clearly afraid he's going to ghost me again, but it's so frustrating when we clearly feel the same about each other, but he is just so hesitant and almost offensively standoffish as we develop deeper closeness. He was married 15 years after getting a girl pregnant when he was 18 or 19 years old. I've come out of an abusive, nearly 10-year relationship a year ago. His childhood was very crappy. I don't know, help. And she says, your videos have already helped me to stay in my lane and not rush it this go round, because I would get in my feelings after we first started talking and try to explain why he should feel safe with me, but that just pushed him away quicker. Thanks so much, Penelope. Okay. Oh, Penelope. This is a very tough situation. I totally understand. A lot of us do understand, but I'm going to help you see this a little more clearly. So let me just describe for you what you told me about what's going on here, all right? What he is doing, what you told me he's doing, is he's insecure, he's terrified, he does not want the pressure of status, he ghosted you twice. I'm just listing everything that you say. He's Christian, he wants to live for God, he's only held hands with you. You're afraid, well, that's part of your fear, but you think he might ghost you again. He is so hesitant and almost offensively standoffish as we develop deeper closeness that you feel that you have to persuade him to feel safe with you suggests he doesn't feel safe with you. Okay, that's what you're telling me about him. About yourself, you're saying that you're trying to go slow, you're Christian, you want to live for God, you want to help him. You don't want to look pushy, but you want to help him to feel secure and get into the relationship with you. But you're also afraid and you're frustrated because he's not treating you very well. And you came out of an abusive relationship just a year ago, and I just noticed in your letter that a year ago is when you got together with this guy, and that you've been trying to persuade him to feel safe with you. Okay, so here's this is a tough love one. It's a tough love Ask the Fairy here. You jumped right in, all right? I don't know, maybe you're going to tell me, well, it wasn't immediately, it was a few months, but you said you got out of it a year ago, a 10-year marriage that was abusive a year ago. This relationship started a year ago. This guy starts ghosting you. What happens to you? You fall in love, all right? When I say that out loud, Penelope, can you hear it? Can you hear that the abused part of you is actually operating right now and controlling your perception about this? What you're describing is that you get strong feelings for somebody, you grow closer, and he keeps ghosting you, and he's offensively standoffish and hesitant. You're talking about trauma bonding. That's what you're describing. When you've fallen in love with somebody and they ghost you, and then they come back, and you think that you're growing closer, that's trauma bonding. Trauma bonding, and I'm just gonna make a guess here. You were severely neglected as a kid. You may have been abused as well. but you were neglected, and you developed this idea that if you could just be helpful enough, if you could just change yourself enough, that you would get the love and attention that you need. Of course you needed it, and you deserve it now as well. But Penelope, you're not getting it. When a guy makes you feel scared all the time and frustrated and he's hesitant, I think, yeah, he sounds at best like an avoidant personality, all right? And you guys might just have this very common relationship pattern with an avoidant person and an insecure attached person, where you're always like kind of running around trying to spackle things up and make it work, and he's pulling back. And there is a way those relationships can work, but they cannot work when you're running around after him, believing that what's missing is your help. Now, when you said, how can I help him without being pushy? I'm going to reinterpret that and say, how can I push him and make it look like I'm just being helpful? But pushing is pushing your will on somebody. And not only is it wrong, it's wrong spiritually, it's to pressure somebody to be in a relationship, but it just doesn't work. And it especially doesn't work in man-woman dynamics. If there is something in this relationship, here's how you can give it a chance. You can back off, all right? You can make some space in this relationship. And have you taken my dating course? It sounds like you haven't. In the dating course for people with childhood PTSD, I give instructions on this of what you do if you're the type of person who clings, and you are. There's people who control, there's people who cling, and there's people who escape. And we all do a little bit of them. And if I were to just sort of like quickly say which ratio are you, it's mostly clinging. You're trying to hold on to a guy who's not very easy to hold on to. He's not giving you what you want. But you're also controlling by trying to, help, trying to use a disguise of the helper to try to push him into being with you and make him see, it's his PTSD or anything. That's control. And then escape. Escape this is the part that I think is the most worrying here for your part here, is that you say, it's so frustrating when we clearly feel the same about each other, but he's just so hesitant and almost offensively standoffish as we develop deeper closeness. Now that is cognitive dissonance right there. You don't feel the same way about it. You want to be close. You're trying to have a close relationship. You want this to turn into the relationship you always wanted. He, on the other hand, is offensively standoffish and hesitant and terrified, as you said. So you don't feel the same way. You guys are not on the same page. That's an escape. Your mind, and you're just like all of us with CPTSD. I don't mean to say this judgy at all, but the beauty of reaching out to other people with CPTSD is just to get a reality check. And I'm just, I'm just a fellow person who's been through this kind of thing before too. And I'll just say, Penelope, I see what you're doing here. You're escaping into the fantasy that you're both on the same page, and that justifies you pushing, helping, teaching. When members of a couple write to me and it's all about like, how do they get somebody else to change? I always say, it's time to ask me, how do you change? That I can help you with. I can help you change. And I think you need to heal from your CPTSD. Until you do, you're going to not have any defenses against this trauma bonding thing. And you know what? He might be a guy who's actually like open to marriage with you. He might be great. Because you're chasing after him, because you're in denial about having come out of a 10-year, was it a marriage, a 10-year relationship with an abuser, and jumping right in and thinking that having been in that situation, that actually now you're the person who can save somebody else, that's irrational. I think that's scary to people. If he is a healthy person, if he's got a healthy heart in there, he's recognizing like something's not right with this. So he deserves to be with somebody who's done their healing. And if you were 10 years in an abusive relationship, my friend, you've got some healing to do. It's going to be very difficult to put together a good relationship. So very good on you that you went slowly with this relationship. That was brilliant. If you had been seeing this guy for a year and you had been in the kind of standard cultural arrangement, which would have involved a sexual relationship, it would be a lot harder to back out of it emotionally. And I just speaking on behalf of people like me, there's a feeling of a loss of dignity when we have to leave a relationship where there was sex. And I'm just saying, it's not to judge anybody or how they do their relationships, but that's just been my experience. So the fact that you've kept it at hand-holding was really smart and careful. And that way, what's really happening is a friendship is forming. A friendship where who knows what's going on with him. He didn't write to me, but you've got you've got a deep yearning for a reliable, loving relationship where somebody really shows up for you. That was my first advice, is just back off. And let me tell you exactly how to do that. I teach this in the dating course. So what it means is, if you've been the person who's clinging, you stop initiating things. You give it a rest. You'll be able to do it again in the future if everything goes well. But for right now, like, I'm going to guess, right? You're like, if he hasn't called you on Friday about the weekend, you're like, oh, are we going to get together? Are we going to do this? And if he doesn't call you, you call him. So don't. Just like let it go quiet and see if he calls you. And when you give the relationship this oxygen so that he can decide, would I like to see Penelope? When would I like to see Penelope? Rather than always getting the phone call, always getting the suggestion, always feeling like he has to go along with what you want or else disappoint you, which evidently he doesn't want to do. He's still around. Just give him some space to lead that. If you guys are Christians, you sort of understand that model. Like, just let him lead it. Let him make the phone calls. Let him reach out to you. And you might have to pretend that you have some other stuff going on, and it won't be a lie, because what you have going on right now is you're trying to heal your trauma pattern. You're trying to heal your tendency to crap fit. Do you know that word, crap fit? I say that. Fitting ourselves to crap. So when you go in and try to help somebody who's just treating you badly and ghosting you, you are crap fitting. That's something you learned to do as a kid that got you through, but don't fit yourself to crap. Be somebody who doesn't fit at all with bad treatment. Somebody ghosting you and not calling you doesn't get to hang out with you. How about that? And you will be amazed. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but if he has feelings for you, you're going to find that when you make space for him to just take his time, follow his own impulses about when it's time to get together, it's going to start to come into focus for him. It's going to become more authentic for him. If he's not that into you, that's always a possibility, right? That's what you're afraid of, and it's possible. He's going to fade away. When he's not under pressure from you, he's going to fade away. But I'm going to ask you, Penelope, to allow that to happen. Allow him to fade away, and allow him the dignity of his choice to decide whether he wants to come towards you and see what he has to offer. A lot of this language of like, I'm afraid, he accidentally got a girl pregnant when he was 18 or 19 and was married, and he's finally free of that marriage, I guess. I totally understand that he wants to try to get his equilibrium in the world before he goes jumping in. So give him space to do that. And it's really not manipulative or dishonest. This is a chance for you too. This is my prescription for you. Let information come to you. Let him show you and demonstrate to you what he feels. What is he interested in doing? Is he marriage-minded? Does he want to date? How often does he want to see you? Just make a space where he can demonstrate that for you. And if you need to, think of a visual of you just sitting in a throne, very awake and witnessing and paying attention about who approaches. And meanwhile, other people are going to be coming and going in your life, and probably you work, and I don't know. I don't have a lot of details about your life. Sitting on a throne as a very special person, and people are demonstrating to you who they are, because in the past, they were no damn good, okay? Somebody's got to come in with discernment, and it's going to have to be you. So you're going to bring into your consciousness that discernment to be aware of who is approaching and what have they got for you. What are their intentions? What are their feelings for you? All right? It's a huge shift from where you are trying to help and pursue and feeling frustrated and fantasizing that, how could he be so difficult when you're really exactly the same? You're not. That's all. And that's fine. You could have a good marriage for 50 years and you're never exactly on the same page. It's okay. It's okay. Now, second, I want to tell you what it looks like when a guy is serious about you, when he does want a relationship with you. And this is what you want to wait for. You want to try to measure opening your heart. I could tell from your letter, you want the right one. You're looking for the one where you can settle down and have a happy relationship. All right. So here are some characteristics that a man will show you. And this is true for women too, I think. They make it quite clear that they like you. They call you and text you regularly. They don't leave you in doubt about whether they like you because they don't want you to leave. They want you to be happy. They take actions that they believe will give you comfort, delight, peace. Things like not leaving you hanging about where they are or when they're going to call. They don't want you to feel that way. They show up for you. They have dinner with you. I always say one indicator of whether somebody is your boyfriend is when it's your birthday, Do they go ahead and make something nice happen for you on your birthday? And are they with you on that day? Or are you running around trying to put something together, right? So that's an indicator. And they will also tell you things like, I love you. They will tell you, I want to be with you. They will tell you, okay, I'll meet your family. I don't think you have to wait for somebody who's like, I really want to meet your family, especially from the family some of us come from. But they're open to that. They want to be in your life. They want to be included, and they let you know. Those are the signs you're looking for. Another sign to look for is when you're with this person, do you find yourself stepping up? Are you playing a better role in your life? Are you becoming a slightly better version of yourself than you used to be because of them? Or are you getting dragged down? Now, this is a real sign. This is a legitimate sign. Is this person causing you to rise up? They don't necessarily actively rise up, but I'll tell you with my husband, and he was kind of slow to come around. But one thing I noticed is that when we were dating, a lot of elements of my life, the way I was parenting, the way I was doing my work, even the way I dressed, I started to take an interest in changing the way I communicated. Like I just found myself taking some steps up. I was becoming a better person, as if some force was just coming and helping me along with it. It wasn't just to impress him. Of course I wanted him to be impressed, but that's a sign that somebody is a good spouse for you, is that they cause you to rise up to a higher level. Another one is, when you are together, do you find yourself able to play a role that benefits other people? So you know how long-time married people, they often have the guest bedrooms when people come to town, or when somebody ends up in jail, they're the ones who bail them out, or they have money to lend, or they have Christmas at their house. There's a function that a married couple plays. Not every couple does it, but if you find that the two of you play that role in service to other people, that's a sign. So I'm just trying to give you a couple of clues to look for that things are on the right track. And whether or not you have that in this relationship right now, I want you to hold hope out, because I bet you when you hear me say that instinctively, you know, like I'm talking about something that you want, that your heart recognizes that you want. The most important sign is that they can be with you. They will be with you. You cannot end up married to somebody who doesn't want to be with you, or who's just playing a big ambivalence game. Now, ambivalence can, in time, lead to commitment. And so something that you can do about that is put a time limit on it. You know, I don't know, 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever you want to do. Don't tell that time limit to him. That's your private thing. And until that time, you're not going to trip about it. You're just going to hang back and make space for him to demonstrate what he's got. Is he into you? Give him space, see what evolves. Maybe before that time it'll be over. One or the other of you will decide it's over. I think 6 months to a year is reasonable after you've been together for a year. Then let that unfold. Just see what happens. Take the pressure off yourself. Stop taking the temperature on the relationship. It's like, oh, does he not? Are we okay? You know, just like let go. Just accept that things take time. Marriage is a really, really long road. And sometimes it starts as a dotted line, okay? That's what you're in. You're in a dotted line, and you just need to behold, not force, what this relationship will become. So I hope that helps you. We had a very romantic first meeting under a giant Christmas tree. It was fun and exciting. He kept using the word magical, which I now cringe at. He told me he loved me within 24 hours of meeting. He purchased personalized license plates that said his name and my name forever within 6 weeks of meeting. I told him he was moving way too fast, and I was a little freaked out, but I was really enjoying our time together, so I ignored the obvious red flags. I hoped he'd lighten up in his intensity as we got to know each other. I believed him to be genuinely kind, loyal, and funny, which I feel are hard qualities to find in a man these days. I'm going to circle that with the fairy pencil and come back to that. I'll read Sherry's letter all the way through. I'm going to circle things that I want to make sure that I discuss in particular when I respond to this letter. All right, let's read it all the way through. So, she says, I continued to see him. We both have a history of getting in relationships too fast. I did not have a crappy childhood, but he did. His mother was cruel and both emotionally and physically abusive. My family has some emotional dysfunction, but overall I had a happy childhood. It's very obvious that he has CPTSD, though, which I learned of when I went searching for help 2 months into our relationship.
But I knew it wasn't my job to fix him. 2 months into dating, I came down with COVID and wound up in the intensive care unit in critical condition for 11 days. He also became ill, but refused to go to the doctor, so he stayed at my condo to care for my cats while I was in the hospital. I was very grateful for that, but at the same time concerned that he didn't seem to care for himself. He's very comfortable in victim or martyr roles. When I got out of the hospital, I wasn't the feisty woman he met under the tree, and he accused me of talking to somebody else while in ICU because he felt I wasn't the same. I sent him home. I was still very ill, and my focus was on getting better. He actually said he thought we would have this magical moment when they wheeled me out of the hospital. What? She says. I barely knew my name after being in the intensive care unit and near death. It was an extremely traumatic experience for me, and all he wanted was magic. I was appalled. Yeah. After that, I told him I couldn't continue to see him unless he got help. I connected him with a local therapist, and he did go consistently for a couple of months, but like you speak of in your videos, it made him worse. He found himself sobbing and completely dysregulated after a session, and with no tools to deal with the emotions that were coming up. That's when I introduced him to your videos. Later, we purchased your dating and relationship course. I was impressed by his desire to be healthier, even though traditional therapy wasn't for him. I really felt compassion for him and was sad he had been through so much. I had hope he'd become more aware of why he had such negative behaviors and address them. I listened to your video for those of us who are in relationships with CPTSD partners. I gave him more patience and time than I normally would because of it. I have belonged to Al-Anon for over 16 years, worked the steps, and have a sponsor who feels he isn't good for me. I've also gone to traditional therapy as needed since my 30s. I have my own share of complex PTSD from being married 22 years to a diagnosed narcissist. I know I'm slipping back into my codependency, which I've worked so hard to be better at. My boyfriend feels my boundaries, like don't yell, are mean. He doesn't have any friends that he does things with. He'll speak of close friends, but I've never met one in an entire year. He focuses on me all day long, consistently tells me he misses me, and gets upset if I don't say it back to him. I've listened to hours upon hours of your videos. My hope was to help guide him to resources so we could have a less drama-filled relationship. That's all I want. I don't expect to be perfect. I don't expect him to be perfect. I have my issues too, but he is wearing me out. I'm finding I resent him. I'm feeling I don't want to tell him I love him or miss him because he constantly wants it. He can be very passive-aggressive and guilts me for not feeling like him, and that makes me angry now. I don't want to feel like him. I don't feel he's healthy, yet here I am still hoping. Who's the unhealthy one, LOL? I do have to say he has gained more awareness of his behavior through your videos and course just since the summer. I have seen changes in him. He's doing daily writing, but he still hangs on to the magical thinking and is obsessed with me. If things don't feel magical every day, he wants to know what's wrong. I spend 4 out of 7 days with him, and he still pouts when I want time for the things in my life outside of him. He doesn't do anything outside of us, which I know is so unhealthy. He calls this love. I'm also dealing with my mom, who was just put into memory care with Alzheimer's. Even when he knows I'm sitting with her, he wants to hear from me, and that feels controlling. Although he loves me like no other in so many ways, which is nice, the downside of his personality is just draining and disturbing sometimes. I'm growing to resent him and have lost respect. If I even mention us breaking up or that I need time away from him, he starts crying. I've never seen a man cry so much in my entire life. Is this normal for a man with CPTSD? I don't mind him sharing his emotions and I don't mind him crying, but a man who sobs every week is too much. I really do love the kind, regulated boyfriend I met. I'm sad to think of him not being in my life, but his neediness is so unattractive and exhausting. When it's good, it's amazing, but when it's bad, well, you know, it's awful. I fear he'll harm himself if I break up. There it is. He's threatened this before. I feel ridiculous now for asking this, but could there be any hope for him at this stage of his life with his severity? Please help. Thank you for all that you do. All right, Sherry, I think I can help. This is a tough case, and I'm really glad you wrote this. Is gosh, I think I've been in both sides of this relationship before. Luckily, I'm on the other side to tell you how you get out of each side of it. All right. So you've been dating for a year now. You're 62 years old, previously married, no kids. Big romantic meeting after connecting online for the first time, and he said it was magical. He changed his license plates. So this, yeah, that is way too fast. He said he loved you within 24 hours of meeting, and you told him he was moving way too fast and you were freaked out, but you were really enjoying the time together, so you ignored the obvious red flags. Okay. And you hoped he'd lighten up, and you believed him to be genuinely kind, loyal, and funny, which I feel are hard qualities to find in a man these days. I just flagged that one because, you know, it's just so hard to find decent men or decent women out there these days. That is a trauma-driven belief that will keep you single. It may have been hard for you, but one of the reasons your relationships have been really unhealthy is because you're not healed yet. Sherry, when you're healed, you would never get together. You would never have had a second date with somebody who said he loved you in the first 24 hours, right? So you've actually been going into relationships with your own half of the, you know, unhealthy dynamic. And that's what's giving you the impression that there are no great men out there, because it's really easy to think like, I'm fine. If I would just meet the right guy, if he were just healthy, everything would be great. There must be no guys like that. They are out there, but they're not dating people with that energy. And they're not dating people who have been in a relationship for the past year because you're already taken, all right? So I want you to put that idea out of your mind that there's no men who are kind and loyal and funny. Not so. And then you both have a history of getting into relationships too fast. You didn't have a crappy childhood, but he did. His mother was cruel and both emotionally and physically abusive. Okay, that's a recipe for his behavior. So it's very obvious to you that he has complex PTSD, which you learned when you went searching for help 2 months into the relationship. Okay, big red flag is when you or anybody is searching for help for your partner within 2 months of dating them. The red flag is you. And yes, it's a red flag that they're so screwed up that you feel that this is necessary. But the red flag is that rather than going, okay, dating is to find out if this person is appropriate for me to date, and then to act as if you're their spouse and you've been with them for years and suddenly they're acting strange. It's not like that. You're seeing how it is. The act of searching for somebody else online for how to help them is inherently codependent, except if you're married to somebody, basically. I know there are exceptions and everybody will go, wait, but you get my idea here. Searching for help, giving them books, courses, any of that stuff is codependently trying to make them be an idea of them that you would like to have, that you originally had, because I don't think there's any other reason why we do that, because we're scared to leave, because we can't deal with our own feelings about leaving. So you're scared of hurting him, but I'm going to wager you're also scared of how you will feel out of a relationship. You know, when you've wanted one for a long time and you meet somebody and you think, I think this could be it. Oh, it's devastating when you just realize, no, it's not it. I have to go back to square one. I got to try again. And it's such a loss, right? And that loss can feel so big that you'll talk yourself into staying in a completely screwed up situation just so you don't have to deal with it. And I think sometimes we fix people as a coping mechanism. We just need to feel some kind of control over a situation that is totally out of control and unworkable. 2 months into dating, you got COVID so bad you were near death. You were in critical condition in the hospital. And when you got out, he imagined there would be this magical meeting, and he was disappointed that you were too tired and still unwell to, you know, deliver this magical experience. Okay, this is where it starts getting pretty sick, all right? This is like point 2 when I just feel like, you should not be here. This is not good. I couldn't continue to see him unless he got help. And then you connected him with a local therapist. So I just want to put out there to everybody, if anybody ever makes an ultimatum to somebody that they need to get help or you won't see them anymore, let them get help. Not you will make them get help and they'll show up. You will not be satisfied with your results with that. Now, again, I make a distinction. If somebody's in your family, if you have like a lifelong commitment to them, then sometimes there is a such thing as intervening and pushing and doing, trying to save somebody's life. But when you've been dating for 2 months, you don't go try to rescue somebody and make them go to therapy and go call around for them and do that, okay? So Sherry, this is where I think you're just kind of ruining your chances of happiness, is instead of seeing reality for what it is, you're trying to go in and fix it and make it into what you want. And from the outside, it's just like really evident, like, no, that's not gonna work, okay? He did go consistently for a couple months, but it didn't help him and he was just crying. Yeah. Take it from someone who has tried to make somebody go get help. And as many people who watch know, I've back in, like 16, 17 years ago, it was a relationship after my divorce that turned out to be somebody with a drug addiction. And I didn't know about it for a few months. And when I did find out about it, I was like you, I just couldn't really face what that meant, which was the end. It wasn't just any drugs, it was heroin, okay? I needed to go. I had children, like no way could I do this, but I was trying to like bargain with reality and go, but I tell you what, if you go to this kind of treatment and inpatient this and go to this many meetings and get a sponsor, then maybe we can make it work. Like I wanted it to work so bad. He didn't want to lose me, so he pretended he was doing all that stuff. And then I turned into that girl who goes around like following him around to see if his car was in the parking lot at the meeting, and it wasn't. And then I'd be all angry. And I never again want to be in that kind of like drama, because what I was trying to do is control him so that I could be okay. And that's what codependence is. Your guy is perfectly capable of seeking help. He can find a therapist if he wants a therapist. If you were serious with you have to get help or I'm not going to see you. And I think you're done with him. I hear that. But I'm just saying, for perspective, that wasn't a real ultimatum when you went in and tried to do it for him, okay? So if you had said that and then you had stepped out of the relationship, he could decide if he wanted to do it. Now, I think that people who are as fragile as him, and I think, yeah, he may have CPTSD, but I think he may have something more than that. And I would leave that diagnosis to I'm not a therapist. So those of you who are therapists or doctors out there, please weigh in on what you think that this guy is dealing with. But what I do know is it's not workable for a relationship. No way. This is not workable. You've just been dating. Okay. And you've stayed with him for 10 months after this meltdown, and that's really rough. Okay. So then you introduced him to my videos, which, he could go online and find them. Sometimes I say to people, like, go ahead and show them a video, let them figure it out. Once they know there's a video by me, and if they like it, they will watch more videos. They can take courses if they want. The dating course is not intended to be taken as a couple. I'm just saying the dating course is for people who are single, who would like to get into a committed relationship. So I appreciate that you bought the course, and that's nice. And I think that you taking the course is going to prepare you for what's next. But I think that somehow you didn't, like the lesson of the course could not penetrate your mind because you were already in a relationship that you needed to justify. And what my course tells you is you write down what you actually need. And I know you don't need somebody who can't even be present for you when you're sick because they're trying to get magic love from you. That is not on your list. I've already seen it. No, I haven't seen your list. But I want you to write that down, that you need somebody capable of being present who can actually care for you when you're sick. I want you to write down somebody who actually is capable of going slow enough to get to know you so that you can mutually find out if you should take little baby steps towards intimacy. Because for people with CPTSD, and for what you have, you may not have CPTSD, I don't know. But you have this thing of rushing in and trying to, crap fit to a relationship and through trying to control the person and retrofit them and make them into, like Pygmalion. I'm going to make you into the sort of person I could feel proud of and feel good with. And I'm not judging you. I've done it. I've done it more than once. But I'm just telling you, like, it's a terrible road to go down. Like, go back, stop now, come back. So then you said, I'm impressed by his desire to be healthier, even though traditional therapy wasn't for him. I don't know. Nothing in your story sounds like he wanted to be healthier. He just wanted you to not leave. But I won't speak for him. He didn't write. And you felt compassion and you were sad. He'd been through so much. Yeah, it is sad. You had hoped that he could be more aware of why he had such negative behaviors and address them. But I'll tell you what, even if somebody who's suffering symptoms like him, like, it is so much an inside job. And I'm going to be making a video very soon about that moment of clarity when you realize, oh my gosh, everything I've ever done on my own, and even with professional help, like I haven't been able to break through my symptoms. And if I can't change, I'm never going to be okay. Like if I had to get to that point where I would go to any lengths to recover and admit that I just, nothing I had ever tried had worked, and that it was going to somehow have to be bigger, even if I couldn't even conceive of what that was, that if that's what I needed, I think it's true for many. I think I would venture it's true for him. So you do people a disservice when you get in there and try to make their recovery go forward. It's true that by leaving somebody or suggesting something, sometimes that influences them. Sometimes leaving them, especially when they have that terror of abandonment that he's got, leaving them can sort of yank their chain and they will move around like a puppet, and do the thing that you're saying they have to do, but they can't sustain it. And that's what you're seeing. He doesn't actually want what you want for him. That's not where he is right now. And I can't really speak for who's capable of these things or why the miracle happens sometimes. Some people get lucky, but most of us, we really have to do the footwork to show up for the miracle, and other people trying to make it happen only slows that down. You say, I belonged to Al-Anon for over 16 years, so I think you know that logic about alcoholism, like meddling in people's alcoholism, trying to make them get into recovery, not letting them hit their natural bottom and have the dignity of problems, and then deciding for themselves what they want to do about those problems. Like that is the way. That is the way. You can assist somebody, you can drive them, but you cannot make them do something. And the only situation where our culture permits us to make people do something is if they are like clearly a danger to themselves or others. And beyond that, people have a certain amount of choice, and there's a reason for that. It's important for people to choose that recovery is what they want right now. All right, so you've gone for 16 years, worked the steps, and you have a sponsor who feels he isn't good for you. Okay, so I'm just going to say it. Either you need stronger meetings or you need a stronger sponsor, because the way you're talking, I'm not hearing a consciousness of what is taught. And Al-Anon is not specifically about codependence, but it certainly helps. There's a 12-step program specifically for that. Al-Anon is incredibly powerful if you're with people who are completely in the solution. And so if you are going to the trouble of working the steps and having a sponsor, sponsors they're not your boss. They can't control you or anything, but obviously he's not good for you. And I would say if you really feel that you're an Al-Anon and that you have the disease of Al-Anonism, then you're in a relapse right now. That's what's going on. So what does a person do about a relapse? They double down on the process of recovery. You go back and you read the literature. You go back and you call the sponsor every day. You go through the steps again, or, depending on how you do the steps, but you give it your all, just like you're wishing he would. Isn't that interesting? Like everything you want him to do, I think it's a cry for help from within yourself, that you need to do that. I think you're in a position to possibly get faster, happier results because you want to get better. But the toxic belief you have is that if he would change, you would be okay. If you would change, you will stop having relationships like this. Okay? Yes, you might be alone for a while, but better alone than in this kind of like soul-sucking relationship that's just maddening. I like the feistiness you have, that it's making you resentful. I know what you mean about losing respect. I've had that happen, and I think when that happens, the relationship is over. And so I don't think you've done anything wrong by losing respect, but I just ask you to honor that feeling, like stay with yourself here. This is not somebody that you have the respect for, and respect is critical to a good relationship. People must respect each other. It's totally important. All right, this guy thinks your boundaries like don't yell are mean. So even that you're trying to like tell me about how unfair it is. It's like if somebody yells at, or if they're yelling at you and you're just like, don't yell, and they can't stop, you have to decide if you're willing to put up with that anymore. Boundaries are your willingness to act, not what you say, it's what you do. So if you say, don't yell, and they continue to yell and won't stop, it's just not a boundary, it's a request. And requests are legitimate, but if you actually want to not be yelled at, you would have to leave somebody who can't stop. And I know it's hard. I know with Al-Anonism and codependency and everything feels like a puzzle, and you keep thinking, well, maybe if I say this, he'll do that, and then I can do this. And, I just, from the outside, I would just say, wash your hands, wash your hands. Just say, I'm in a relapse right now. I got to get out of this drug. I got to get out, okay? He doesn't have any friends. He speaks of close friends, but you've never met one in a year, focuses on you all day long, gets upset. So I think there's something more than CPTSD going on here. I do. I don't know what you do about it. And like I said, I'm going to leave that to the professionals, but you don't know what to do about it either. And so this fantasy that you kind of have the solution if he will just follow it, let it go, girl, let it go. You're also dealing with your mom who was just put into memory care for Alzheimer's. And when he knows you're sitting there, he's trying to demand attention. Okay, I'm so sorry that's happening with your mom. And I think sometimes when something very scary and stressful and demanding is happening, the idea of leaving a relationship feels hard, but that's actually a very easy time to do it because you're needed right now. You're needed to help this transition of your mom. She is luckily in care, and then you can step out of that and you can get on with your life, your healing, your recovery, and your relationships, and your ability to have joy. So you say something here that is the same as what I hear again and again from many people who are in abusive relationships, and it's that when it's good, it's amazing, but when it's bad, well, you know, it's awful. There's some version of that almost everybody in an abusive relationship says, because, you know, there's a reason why we got together with these people who turn out to have this very bad side, all right? So yes, don't be fooled because it's good sometimes. The proof is in the pudding of how do you feel? You feel miserable. You feel drained, exhausted, disrespectful, just completely harried by this guy and afraid he'll harm himself if you leave. So that's called being a hostage. I do think what he's doing is abusive. It's emotional abuse to make threats to harm oneself if somebody leaves. I think sometimes people do that. They don't have their full faculties. They're not mentally well enough to take responsibility for what they're doing, but it is abuse. So I hope that helps you realize that you are being abused and you need to go, even if he can't help how he's behaving. One thing that you can do, because there is a concern that he would harm himself, and sometimes that is legitimate, is you can call a crisis line and ask them to guide you on the best way to do this. They will have experience, they will have professionals. You can alert them to who he is and what's going on. You can leave him with the phone number if you want. You can do the best a person who is not him can do and go save yourself. I don't want you to ever have to waste your good, precious life ever again on someone who isn't into you, isn't worthy of you, or isn't good to you. And here's the hard part. If you have a history of, red flag blindness, which is common, especially for people who were neglected or abused as kids, there's a pretty good probability you're still vulnerable to it. It just works that way. So what are the things you should be looking for? Let's talk about it. All right, the unavailable category. Here's one. They tell you they're getting divorced, but they are not yet divorced. Now, this can sometimes be not a marriage, but a relationship. But this is a really common thing that people with complex PTSD, they will be very good at attaching to a future fantasy of what the relationship can be like, the potential, right? So somebody goes, well, I'm about to be divorced. And you'll see this sometimes when somebody's leaving a marriage and they're so frustrated and they couldn't wait to go out and see people. They're right up there on the dating sites. They just want to get going. And it is this sort of inconvenient fact that the old thing is not really over or out of the way yet. So maybe they're still living with the person, or the divorce hasn't gone through, or there's a lot of drama with the ex still going on. That is a red flag. If somebody would go on and try to start a new relationship when they still have all that unfinished business, trust me, there are going to be problems ahead. Okay, so along the same lines, sometimes you might be dating somebody and, okay, yes, they are technically divorced, but the ex lives in the house. They're down in the basement. There's some sort of financial arrangement or interdependency going on. And I know that people can come up with very creative ways of continuing a relationship or sharing a house or raising kids, but it's very unlikely to indicate smooth sailing ahead for getting into a new relationship with this person. It could happen, but I'm just telling you, if you're blind to red flags, this is one you really need to look at. All right, here's another one in the availability category. They are full of stories that are both horrifying, they're full of anger, they're full of grief about terrible things that their ex or exes did to them. That is sort of comes up very front and center in the relationship, and you're dealing with a lot of that. That's a big red flag. For somebody to be really ready for a relationship, including you, we got to have some healing around what happened. And healing means we don't have to talk about it all the time. All right. There comes a time if you're really building like a close relationship with somebody, that you would talk about what past relationships were like, but concisely. It wouldn't be this thing that was emotionally leaking all over everything. That's a red flag. All right. Here's one. They talk about sex with other people in the past or even the present. And even worse, they act like it's no big deal. And this is something that happens for people with CPTSD who are on the receiving end of that kind of thing. You think you're in this big, romantic relationship that's forming. They start talking about, oh yes, and all this sex with other people. You feel jealous, weird, uncomfortable, and you feel like you can't say anything. So you get quiet, you crap fit to it. How many this happens to so many people where you think you have to be cool about it. Oh yeah, so you're just talking about that. I'm cool. I don't want to appear to be jealous. But that is how you abandon yourself for somebody who's actually just waving a red flag in your face. That is one way that you can not have to deal with a red flag, is abandon yourself. So don't do that. If somebody else's behavior makes you feel bad and uncomfortable and like you're not being honored as their partner, then it's a red flag. Okay, treat it as such. You are allowed to feel that. All right, so that's one of the manipulative red flags. Here's another one. They behave on different dates in a way that changes and throws you off. So one time they're like the perfect gentleman, another time they're, rough or loud or angry. Could have to do with alcohol or drugs, right? And those are red flags all by themselves. But, if like drinking to the point of behavior change, showing up for dates drunk, definitely a thing. But just this, that you see these different sides of the personality, like they're putting on their best appearance for you at the beginning, and then you see this really rough side. If you have a history of trauma, if you have a history of crap fitting and getting into trauma bonded things where somebody's really nice and then they're really mean, they love bomb, they discard. If you're good at putting up with that, you got to really, really see that red flag when it happens. It will never be a good thing for you to be with somebody who blows hot and cold like that. It's emotional abuse under the best of circumstances. For a person with CPTSD, it is just, it'll just wreck your autonomy, your clarity, your confidence. You don't want to have that happen. All right. I'm thinking of an example. Somebody jokes about being in love with you, and then they talk like they're like you're just friends, and you feel like you have to be cool, right? It's like whenever you see yourself acting cool about something that makes you feel really violated and hurt, that is your red flag. That's your emotions telling you the red flag is waving, even when your mind can't see it. Another manipulative red flag is they get angry when you try to set a boundary. So let's say you say, I'm not going to go to this birthday party for your ex-girlfriend. Or, this is too soon. I don't know you well enough to have sex. And they get angry at you. All right, right there's your red flag. That's a deal breaker right there. Or here's one. They keep you waiting by, you're always waiting. And if you have been abandoned as a kid, people leaving you waiting when you're just sitting there and they don't show up for half an hour and a half, they're not calling, they said they'd call, that kind of thing, that is a very harsh form of manipulation. Best case scenario, they're just total flakes, but why would you want to be with somebody who activates all that trauma for you with the inconsideration of being late like that? They say they want to see you on a certain weekend, and I'll call you, okay? And then you don't call, but you've held the whole weekend for them. And then you're just sitting there kind of in all your CPTSD emotions, about when are they going to call? Should I just go ahead and make plans? And you might find yourself where it gets so upsetting that the only way that you have the power to get out of the house and just go do your own thing is with anger, is with a lashing out type of thing. All of this is so destructive to close relationships. And honestly, I think it's fine if you wreck your relationship with somebody who manipulates you like that. But when you've been in a lot of relationships like that, it starts to become habit. And so somebody simply being late in an innocent way can set off this whole avalanche of old feelings from people who treated you in a truly, uncaring way or manipulative. So then you're pushing good people away. So you don't want to let this happen to you. Don't let this scar you and damage you. All right, now we're going to move into the red alert category, all right? One is they are rude to people you encounter together. So you've gone out on a few dates, you're at a restaurant, and they are just an a-hole to the food server, or they're yelling at other drivers and cursing, or they're cruel or rough with animals. All right, right there, I would just say, draw the line. People who treat other people that way, it's only going to be worse when it's in the house, when it's in their personal relationship. I would just say completely get away from people who do that. Now, everybody has had a bad day, maybe where they, yelled at another driver or something. But if people are doing that on early dates, if even when they're on their best behavior with you, they can't control that, it really is a bad sign. Okay. Another sign, they suddenly have a financial emergency and ask to borrow money. All right, never lend money to somebody you've just begun dating. And honestly, I don't know where you want to draw the line on that in terms of how long you've been dating, but so often that's a level of red flag that somebody either has serious financial problems, a serious drug problem that becomes a financial problem, right? Or the whole thing is a scam. And it doesn't happen that often, but if you have CPTSD and if you have a history of getting involved with people and you couldn't see red flags, you are a target for scammers. So never lend money, and always be suspicious if somebody asks for a loan. I could see a scenario where you go to a restaurant, the other person was going to pay, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't have my wallet, I'm so sorry." They should actually be willing to cancel the restaurant to deal with that rather than expect you to pay. I wouldn't say if somebody said, and you stepped in and said, "That's all right, I'll get this one, I have this." Okay, fine. That's not a scam or anything. It's a red flag. It's a red flag. So just keep an eye on that. All right, so here's something. They lie about something. They lie to you, or you hear them lie to somebody else. They get a restaurant bill and the server forgot to charge them for something, some $20 thing, and they don't speak up about it. And with you, they're like, "Haha, they forgot to charge us." You don't want to be with that person. That person is quite comfortable with dishonesty in a way that affects other people. Don't do it. Don't be with that person. Another thing is if they ask for your help deceiving someone. It's like, "Oh, tell them we couldn't come because lie." I just would say that's a red flag. You might find a way to, I don't know, maybe you can work out some of these things. Maybe they don't bother you, but I'm just telling you, it's a red flag if somebody in the early phases of dating, and I'm just going to call that the first 6 dates, if they're already doing that, it's a really bad sign, okay? It's a bad sign that they're kind of their backbone is suspect. So when you see a red flag, do you have to leave? No, you don't. But see the red flag, notice it, stay connected to people who support you, who love you, who have your best interest in mind. Talk to them about what's really going on. One red flag for you is that if you find yourself feeling like you have to hide from your friends what's going on in your relationship, that is your red flag that something's wrong with the relationship. You know your friends are going to see it, and you're trying not to see it. So remember, the first 6 dates, people are on their best behavior. Whatever they're doing now is likely to be worse later. So keep a sharp eye on that. Don't be afraid to end a relationship. Do be courageous about not rushing into the relationship. Don't get attached. Take it slow. That's a good way to support yourself as a person with CPTSD.